Well, good morning or afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome back to another episode of Tuesday Tips. I'm your host, Marin Smith. I'm here at Grow Schools, and as usual, we're here Tuesdays, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. 10 minutes discussing biggest challenges facing school leaders. And this week, I'm welcoming back Tony. Hi, Tony. Thanks for being here.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
We're going to have a discussion on facilities challenges and strategic growth for charter schools as it relates to some recommendations around enrollment. And Tony, I know facilities represent this huge operational challenge for a lot of charter schools. And so finding a space that allows them to plan for growth, welcome new students, is really important. And so understanding how enrollment, funding, facilities, kind of all these three things work together can really help school leaders make strategic decisions. So let's dive right in. My first question for you is, what are the most common facility challenges you see charter schools face, and how do these impact their ability to grow?
Yeah, I mean, just the word facility can be a challenge for charter schools in the very first place, because unlike our district counterparts in the public school space, charter schools aren't just given a building. So just simply being able to locate that space becomes a challenge from the very beginning. Now, let's assume for a second that you are in a space and you've got it, and now we're a couple years down the road and we've been growing. Common things that we see are, schools just being over capacity for the wait list that they have. So wanting to be able to serve more students, to push that educational mission, and just not having the physical space for it. Beyond that, oftentimes we'll see schools that are in buildings that might not have been traditionally built for a school. Sometimes old big box stores, movie theaters, etc. And so the space isn't as optimized for learning as you would like, and certainly not as optimized as it might be if you were to build it from the ground up. And then, sort of along those lines, common things that I see are schools and facilities that might not have been upkept as much as they want to. Right? You talked about funding. You have a limited dollar, and how much of that dollar is able to go to facilities upkeep. Sometimes there are some tough choices to make when it comes to facility upkeep versus educational programming. So those are really kind of the big three that I see. Of course, there's a litany of others, but those are some of the big ones.
Yeah. Yeah. And speaking of that big three, kind of building off that answer, can you explain a little more about the relationship between enrollment, funding, and facilities? And I've heard you use this term virtuous cycle for school growth. Can you talk some more about that?
Yeah, it's I mean, it's kind of the simplest chicken or the egg question. What comes first, enrollment or funding or facility? Without a facility, you cannot have enrollment. Without enrollment, you cannot have funding. And without funding, you'll have trouble acquiring and maintaining the facility. So how do you kind of navigate and manage those three competing interests in order to get yourself into that space that will lean into your educational mission? We're fortunate that there's a lot of organizations out there that try to help with the funding side of things. Grow Schools, of course, being one of them. Where we can, take a look at a facility, help a school into that facility, and allow them to more focus on the enrollment side of this of this equation. But yeah, it can be a difficult one to navigate as a school is in that growth process, because again, you're growing because you have a need, but where will that need go as you grow? That was a tongue twister.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't roll off the tongue, but yeah, great answer. It's a complicated puzzle, and kind of always one that school leaders are looking to balance sustainably.
Yeah, and along those lines, that's where having a person or organization or someone in your corner, and this can be an organization like Rose Schools. This can be someone at your statewide association. Sometimes these are financial advisors, but somebody who has that expertise to take a look at the complete landscape of what your school's doing from an enrollment perspective, from a facilities perspective, from a funding perspective, and really kind of help you align and put all of those pieces together in order to say, hey, great, here's the most sustainable way forward as it relates to your facility and growth there are traps that you can fall into when not looking at that whole picture. It's just like personal finance. You want to be taking everything into consideration, and sometimes an expert is the best person to bring on board for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to take a quick pause and welcome those of you who might be joining us a little after the top of the hour. We're here with Tony discussing how charter schools can navigate facilities when it comes to trying to balance also enrollment and funding. You can catch all our conversations with experts covering biggest challenges facing school leaders right here, Tuesdays, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. So a couple more questions for you, Tony. Next, I'm curious what critical questions school leaders should ask themselves before deciding to expand their current facility versus relocating.
Yeah, it's a really important thing to think about. Oftentimes, the thought becomes, why are you thinking about a relocation or an expansion? Is it simply to accommodate more students? Is it to get to a space that is more mission oriented? I always use the example of a performing arts school needing significant performance space or black box space. But why are you thinking of making that transition? Depending on your answer, the answer might be to stay put. And sometimes I encourage schools to do that, really because anytime we start thinking about moving a school to a new location, enrollment almost always, and of course there's exceptions to every rule, but almost always will take a hit. Not every family member will make that transition. So having the knowledge of why you're making that move, and being able to engage your existing families as to why the move is important and why it's worth sticking with the school when they're making that move is an important thing to kind of chart out ahead of time. Conversely, a lot of times, a school might be in a facility where making the move will help attract new students. Think about moving to a location where there's population growth, a building that's more attractive, again, something that's more educationally relevant. In those instances, you might be able to leverage that building to help increase that enrollment, which of course then it helps to increase funding and it helps create a sustainable facility. Again, the virtuous cycle continues.
Yeah. Yeah. And so going off of that, I'm a school leader. How do I determine, well, I'm not, let's pretend I was a school leader. How do I determine if my school is ready to take that step for facility ownership? Like what are the enrollment benchmarks, for example, that I should meet?
Yeah. One thing I always tell schools, so number one, either you've topped out at your enrollment at your existing space, or you've shown, positive growth every single school year. And I say every single school year. If you've been open for 20 years, that might not be the case. But at that point, maybe you've plateaued and it's because you've got every seat filled. That might be something to consider when you're thinking about ownership. The other thing that I would say is really spend some time and think about why ownership. Most schools, most charter schools don't have it in their educational mission to be landlords, to own their building, to have a property holding. That comes with a lot of responsibility. That comes with upkeep. That comes with a cost. Have we solved, and this is for the school leader to ask themselves, have we solved all of our other problems where now this can be the one that we take on? And what I mean by that is if you're deferring your educational programs in order to make a building purchase, meaning you're going to divert resources that could otherwise be spent building a strong educational program in order to buy your building for no other reason than you think you should, that's probably not the time to be making that leap. You'll probably want to put more money into into your educational programming, which, by the way, helps to increase students. It'll raise your test scores. It'll let families in the community know, well, now we've built that enrollment up a little bit, and that might make that purchase a lot more sustainable and a lot easier because your enrollment is higher, thus your funding is better, thus you can now focus on your facilities, and gosh, the virtuous cycle that we talk about all the time comes back into play. So think about where you are from a school, from an education standpoint, and if we really have ticked off all or most of our boxes where, I don't want to say you don't have any other problems, but many of those problems have been solved or are in the process of being solved, then we can really start to take a look at ownership from your perspective. Otherwise, there's a lot of great organizations out there that can help a school with leases, get you into something that's much more flexible, where those organizations are kind of handling the headache of facility ownership for you while keeping you in a stable facility, because really, when we talk about ownership, when I talk to school leaders, that's what they're looking for. They want stability out of their facility, and that doesn't always have to come with ownership.
Yeah, and it seems like an important question then to ask is like, is owning my facility actually going to help me achieve my mission?
Right.
And if the answer is yes, then that's a green light, right?
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
super great points. Tony, I want to thank you for all your
Yeah.
insights today. Thanks so much again for joining us.
Of
We're
course.
here Tuesdays, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. Again, 10 minutes discussing all these great things. You can learn more about facility planning, strategic growth support, enrollment strategy, all the good things on our website. Just head over to growschools.com. So thanks again to Tony for joining us, and we'll see you next time.